In honor of Women's History Month, Lindsay VP Client Services and Culture, teams up with Julia Loudy, Senior Account Executive, to talk about women in the workplace. They get personal, they get real, and this is an episode you will not want to miss. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you can catch future episodes. Now, sit back and enjoy the conversation.
Hey, Julia.
Hi, Lindsay.
I'm really excited to be talking with you today.
I am too. You're one of my favorite people to talk to.
And I feel the same way about you. And we get a really cool and huge and important topic to be talking about today.
Yes, we do. Or do you want to share?
I mean, I can share. I think, we were paired up to talk about women. It's Women's History Month all throughout March. We're seeing the celebrations kind of last throughout the month, all, nationwide, on our local level, which we'll share a little bit about that in a minute. And then even at Hodges, we've been celebrating women. And I just think, and in our industry, and it's just really special. And I'm really honored to be asked to talk about this, and to do that with you is especially cool. So
I know.
But I have to ask, what went through your mind when this topic was assigned to you?
I was very excited because it's something I'm very passionate about, but I also started getting nervous about saying something that could be insulting or taken the wrong way. And then I started thinking that is probably me being a woman and wanting to, or societal norm of being a woman, of wanting to appease everybody, which is not always the best thing.
It gets hard. It's a big topic, and we want to get it right. And I think, like you said, that's our nature, to want to get it right and bring everyone in, involved, make sure we say the right thing and make everyone feel warm and fuzzy. That's just so quintessentially the woman way. But for me, I was like, what do we talk about? Where do we start?
Yeah.
I mean, even saying Women's History Month, it's holy moly, there's just been so much. And we could go in 1,000 different directions, but we were assigned, a max of 25 minutes. So we can't go in 1,000 directions. We had to go in one. So you can share the direction we chose to go in.
We finally decided to narrow it down to women in the workplace. We felt like that was something that everybody can resonate with, whether you are a woman in the workplace or if you work with a woman, which pretty much applies to almost everybody. So I think this is going to be a great topic for us to kind of break down today.
I love that other dimension of working with women in the office. So really excited about that. Before we jump into that, we were talking about seeing Women's History Month play out on a local level and a statewide level. And we have two really cool facts to share about Virginia and about Richmond. And one of them is that the city of Richmond, announced they will now be closed for International Women's Day each year. So March 8th, moving forward, the city is officially closed. And it's one of very few cities in the country to not only recognize that, but to close for the day. So I thought that was so cool that was right here in our city.
Yeah, especially because I feel like Richmond, we aren't always seen as having the best, we don't have the best history. So it's amazing seeing how far we've come and progressing and thinking about how to change.
Totally. And on that same note, on the day before Women's History Month, it was another especially cool day because Jennifer McClellan was sworn in as the first Black woman to represent Virginia in Congress. So, those two things back to back, made me feel good about Virginia, about Richmond. We have a long way to go. We don't know, it took a long time to get here, but to see these signs of progress and really appreciating the contributions of women is, it feels good.
Absolutely.
Okay. And, before we jump in to the full topic of the podcast, when we think about listeners for this podcast, I can think of two women who will definitely listen to this podcast. Do you know what I'm thinking?
Yes, I do. I believe I do.
So I have to ask. Yes, I have to ask. One, you got to tell me your mom's name because we have to address them as their names. And then what is one trait or something about her that you really hope to carry on with you in your life and in your career?
I love that. That's a hard one. There's so many. My mother's name is Mary Ann. She's a wonderful woman and just such a ray of sunshine as a person. I think if there's one trait about her that I wish that I could have and I hope to kind of grow into as I continue in my life is my mother is one of the most patient people I have ever met in my entire life. And I am kind of the opposite. So she's always been the yin and yang for me of, whenever I've been spiraling and, being a crazy toddler doing tantrums and, teenager years and everything. My mom was just always really patient in letting me figure out my journey and listening to me. And that's just something I hope that when I have my own family one day that I can be half as patient as my mother. Yeah, I would say that's definitely the one trait. I think if I had to pick out of everything, that would be number one. What about you?
Well, that's a good one. And may we all embody Mary Ann when we need our patience the most. So let's reflect on that. My mother's name is Rita. I tell a lot of stories about Rita.
She do.
And there's a lot I could share about her that makes her wonderful, but I might have to say two things. And if you want to add something on for Mary Ann.
Yeah. I love you, Mom.
That.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good one. Rita just is very warm, very nurturing. It's just her nature to be that way. People are kind of drawn to her. People tell them their stories. She's just one of those beings that kind of attracts people. And I think people can just tell she's a safe space. And I love that about her. And the other thing I love about her is she is always rooting for the underdog. And I think we just need more people like that in this world. She always can spot that, or that's who she's rooting for. And I think that's just a really, it's a good trait to have in this world.
Yeah. Well, Linz, I feel like you embody both of those yourself. So I feel like you're carrying on those traits.
Oh, I love hearing that. When you said ray of sunshine, I was like, Julia.
Sometimes.
You might be that as well. No, really. I mean, I find you to be just a joy to work with. And like I said, I was so excited to be paired up with you today. And I smile when I see your face. So I think you've got a little Mary Ann in you as well.
Thank you. Can only hope.
Yes. Okay. Let's get down to business, as they say. First, I think we should talk about the fact that any one of the 11 women at Hodges could take this topic and do an amazing job with this. We all have our own experiences. We're all in different journeys. Some of us are on the beginning of our careers, and some of us are, 10, 15 years into our career. So I know in full confidence, any one of our 11 coworkers could do an amazing job. So I gotta give a shout out to them.
Absolutely. And hearing that, Linz, I'm curious, you and I are in very different stages of our life and our career. But I think we both remember the beginning of it very well. So I was just curious, were there women along the way that helped you get to where you are today in your career?
That's a good starting question. And yes, first of all, Richmond has an amazing PR community in general. But I happened to find a few women in those early years that really helped give me a boost. And one of them is Sarah Hunt, which she's very well known in the PRSA world. She's kind of she's just been with the group for a really long time, but she was actually my first manager. So she was someone who kind of showed me the ropes and got me interested in PR and PRSA. And I started really as a wallflower, like 24 years old at those meetings, almost afraid to speak up. And if you flash forward 15 years, I was president in 2021. So it's kind of cool, especially when I look at it from that lens. And it was Sarah who connected me to what was CRT Tanaka. Today it's Padilla, and she ushered me along in that journey, really encouraged me to apply. I was having an amazing time working with Sarah, but she really wanted and encouraged me to continue on my career and moved to CRT Tanaka. And that's where I met Natalie Smith. And Natalie has just made an incredible impact on my life and my career. So when I think of the women who helped me in those early years, it's without a doubt Sarah and Natalie.
I love to hear that. I love those stories of us just supporting each other and helping each other along the journey.
I know. It's amazing who you meet along the way and really inspire you. What about you?
This is going to sound super cheesy, but one of my people, one of the women that's helped me along in my career was Lindsay. You were my first, or one of my, not my first professor. You were one of my professors, and you were somebody that I just really looked up to. And I immediately was like, I want to be Lindsay when I graduate. Like, this is who I want to be. And you contacted me about a job position that you thought that I would be a good fit for. And I applied, and it was at Golden Word, which is a media relations firm here in Richmond. And, you know, that really started my career off on a big positive note. I really sunk my teeth into the media relations world. And while I was there, I stayed in contact with Lindsay. We would get coffee all the time and just, you know, talk about my career and where I was going. And I just always heard about Hodges and thought, you know, this is, I think, the next step of where I want to go. And I just waited for an opening. And and now I get to sit here and be on a podcast with you and, you know, client meetings. And it's just fun how that's come full circle. But also while I was at Golden Word, I met one of my dearest friends in the entire world, Lizzie Reed. And she's just been the person that, you know, if I'm ever having a day where I'm frustrated or, you know, don't know what I'm doing, she's just the person I feel like I can always go to, and we support each other and we just understand each other. Because, you know, you want to be able to vent about some things to your friends sometimes, but they just don't understand if they're not in the PR world, what you're even talking about. So it's always been great to have that support system.
I couldn't agree more. Where would we be without our girlfriends in general? But to have PR girlfriends, and they know the ins and outs. Yeah. They are invaluable. And I have to give a shout out to Shana McGank if we're going down that route, because, you know, she's my rock when it comes to my PR girls. So, but I mean, to go back to what you said, Julia, you were an amazing student. Honestly, again, ray of sunshine. I mean it when I say that. So you are embodying Marianne, because you sat in that class and I just knew you were going places, and you grew up to be Julia, and you're charting your own path and doing amazing things in media and influencers and writing and strategy. And it's just been so cool to watch that. So it's really kind of you to say that. And it's really special to know you can leave a mark on someone, but it's been amazing from this end watching you grow into who you are. So
thank you, Linz.
Well, fast forward to now, we work with so many smart women at Hodges. We have incredible clients who are women that are really inspiring, so many partners. And I know we are like-minded, you and I and those people I just mentioned, when it comes to lifting up other women. But what are some ways specifically that you try to do just that in your career and with the women you're working with?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that I always try to do is to share credit and recognize the accomplishments of my fellow, you know, the women at Hodges, and even my clients that are women. I just always try to, you know, if they're doing something cool on a project or if they led something, I really want to make sure that they're the person speaking about it and getting that recognition. Because I think sometimes, you know, we could be in a meeting and just kind of go through what our updates are, but I think giving people that opportunity to really have the spotlight shown on them is crucial for women being, you know, heard and seen. And I love at Hodges, we do a weekly email that goes out celebrating all of the amazing things that each of us are doing at Hodges, because sometimes when you're on different accounts, you're not necessarily hearing what everybody else is doing on accounts that you're not on. So it's a great opportunity for us to, you know, share credit, share those accomplishments, and really be a sounding board for each other.
Yeah. And, you know, as the person who sends out that weekly email and I kind of collect from everyone, it is like we're living that goal, because I see so many women sending in recognition for other women. And it's really just heartwarming. And it as we're all kind of trying to do our best to lift up each other.
Absolutely. Another way that we really like to show support with each other at Hodges is just straight up asking our fellow women at Hodges how they're doing and how we can support them. And I think that's crucial for making sure that we're not just kind of floating through the days and thinking that we know what each other are thinking, and just really making sure that we're being heard and seen.
Yes. Like, I love how you put that, straight up asking people, because I mean, what could be more direct? What could be a faster way to that support that maybe this person needs than just straight up asking, how can I help you? I love that. And I love that focus on directness, and really don't mind read, just ask.
Exactly.
I think a cool tip we learned, which we'll have, I feel like with this conversation, we can be big picture and we can get straight down to like some nitty gritty tips and tricks. But someone taught us at the start of the pandemic, if you're running a virtual meeting, especially if you're in that lead role facilitating, watching who's coming on and off of mute. Sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise in a regular meeting, and maybe even a virtual meeting makes that harder. So being mindful of looking at who's coming on and off mute and making sure that the women in your meeting are getting a chance to chime in and share their insights. And, you can just say like, hey, Julia, I see you're coming off mute. Did you have something to share? And just making sure that that we're making space, especially when you're in that facilitator role and you can have that control. I thought that was so helpful. And, here we are 3 years later doing just that. So that was a tip I found really helpful.
I know. I think I love that we're constantly just encouraging each other to speak up and to share our thoughts and ideas. Speaking of which, when Lindsay and I were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about on the podcast, we decided to ask some of the fellow women at Hodges for some ideas about what we could possibly cover. And a topic that came up over and over again was just that they would love to hear some tips and advice for women in the workplace. So let's do just that and share some tips that Lindsay and I have kind of picked up on over the years. And all thoughts are our own. Yes. Please feel free to add to these in the comments and reach out to us. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give pretty much anybody, but especially women in the workplace, is to be yourself. That's something that I personally have struggled with. When I first started out, I was just constantly afraid of messing up all the time. And so I would be silent and not say anything because I was more concerned about what if I said the wrong thing. And that wasn't really being myself. And I've learned over the years that when I actually am authentically me, I feel like I've accomplished more. I am able to fully share my thoughts and ideas, and things have gone better for me than just kind of, shrinking and feeling like I can't be who I am.
That is the perfect tip to start with, because I think it's the main point probably to convey, is to be yourself at work. I love that so much. I'll add maybe advocating for yourself.
Absolutely.
For the good work that you're doing, making sure that is known as you're bringing along those women you're working with. Be mindful also advocating for yourself. If you're ready to take on another project, or you're ready for that next step in your career, let that be known. Speak up. Find the process or the path forward. Identify that and let it be known. If you're ready for another project, if you're ready to take on more work, if you're ready to manage someone, if you want to take on that challenge, whatever it might be, advocate for yourself. Make sure your accomplishments are known. As you're bringing along the fellow women on your team, you're also bringing along yourself, and just, speak up for what you want, and, directly ask for it.
Absolutely. And kind of going off of that, another tip is finding somebody, whether that's a coworker or, just anybody in your close circle, of like helping to find a champion to speak up for you, to help you build your confidence. I think it's crucial in helping each other continue along the way.
100%. 100%. I agree with that. I know that's what Natalie and Sarah did for me. I try to do that for people at Hodges or at other agencies I've been at over the years, just being that voice and finding that champion is so, so crucially important. This next tip is really tactical, but if you hear it once, you will start implementing it right away. And we'll call it stop apologizing. But really, I want to see people saying sorry a lot less in their day. So if you see yourself typing it, really, really think about if that's the right word you should be saying. Maybe instead of sorry for the delay, think about thank you for your patience. We don't need to apologize constantly. We don't need to respond to an email immediately. And if it's not immediate, it's been a couple hours, apologizing that it's late. That's not necessary. So really just kind of being very cautious and mindful of that word.
I am one of the biggest offenders of saying sorry. And it's been something that I have had to try to rethink, especially, this is another tip, but especially rethinking how I'm writing certain things. I feel like I always want to apologize or, just following up here, you are following up. You don't need to say it to somebody. So it's just rethinking how you're wording things and not feeling like you're constantly having to like protect people's feelings, because nobody's feeling insulted by your email most of the time.
I mean, I'll write out an entire email and then I start at the very top again and I go through and I am deleting the word just. I'm deleting the word sorry. I don't need to be softening this. I'm following up on something you committed to. That's okay. It's okay to be direct about that. And just keeping that in mind, it goes back to like not overthinking or mind reading. We don't know someone's going to be upset that we're following up or anything, or that this email came in too late or too soon or whatever it is. So it's just, try not to overthink it. Try not to mind read, that can really trip you up in your work. And it's so important because, we're not the only people saying this. This needs to be surround sounded in the way that it is, because it's a real thing amongst women. We want to be seen, or we've been conditioned to want to be seen as soft and all of those things. But really, it's something that I'm really liking to see more attention brought to, because it's something that definitely needs to go away.
Absolutely. And kind of thinking off of that, I know that I get so self-conscious that I'm using exclamation points in my emails. Even if it's one, I'm like, is somebody going to take this wrong? Like, is it too sunshiny? Does that make me look like weak? And I've just started to realize I need to be myself, and I like to be a positive, excited person about the work that I'm doing. So if I have an exclamation point in my email, obviously not every single sentence, but if you want them to be there, that's your style, be yourself. But I think just not feeling like I need to dull myself to kind of go along with the status quo of like what should be a woman in business.
Yes. I love that. This really opens up like a whole other topic of just how we should act and all of that, that when we throw in power dynamics. But I heard someone on a podcast talking about how a little part of you dies when you laugh at a man's joke in a meeting or at work that isn't funny, but you find yourself doing it because of the power dynamic. And it doesn't need to probably just be narrowed down to just men. It could just be the power dynamic, but just be yourself. And I think it's like why we said it has to be the first thing we say, because it kind of all rolls back up to that. If you want to have an exclamation point or a fun closing or on your emails or whatever, or your email signature to have colors on it, like you do you. And I think that's so important. So, and I think, like you said, that exclamation point kind of reflects your excitement for your role, for the job, for the project. So, you do you.
Exactly.
And now to go back to it's off topic a little bit, but I have to tell everyone, especially I help with a lot of the hiring at Hodges, and I try to be really mindful of this. I just want to tell women to apply for the job. And I mean that because there's data that supports that women they will self-select out of a job if there's like one or two tasks or responsibilities that maybe they don't feel 100% confident about. And while there's data, it says men are still more likely to apply for a job that they're only 60% qualified for.
Which we see all the time.
We do.
And it's
we
funny
see it all the time.
Because most are teachable in a job. So if you have those soft skills, apply. You can learn almost anything. And if you are right for the job in so many other aspects, like why not apply? Nobody's perfect.
Totally. And we really try to put language in there at the end of our job descriptions of like, does this look interesting? Feel like you can do most of this? Curious to learn more? Please apply. Like we're doing whatever we can to just try to level that playing field. And we want to hear from more women. So it's just something that really, I feel really passionate about it because it's shocking. That data is just shocking. And I know we're running out of time, but I have to offer one other opinion that might be frowned upon, but is it fair to say we should embrace imposter syndrome? Or how do you feel about imposter syndrome as a whole? And how do you feel about the idea of embracing it?
I think
you need me to explain why.
No, I think you should definitely embrace it in the sense of everybody feels it. And as I said earlier, it's like nobody's perfect. Everybody's learning along the way. You might have some skills that you are building towards. Like, it's just everything's just a constant journey. And you'll think back in a few years and be like, oh my gosh, I've really grown so much. But I feel like we're constantly so much in the moment and seeing everybody around ourselves that we can compare to. And we don't really think all the time of how far we've actually come. I know the other day, Lindsay, I had seen somebody that was younger than me, like that had accomplished so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't even done anything like that. And Lindsay was like, it's a moment of imposter syndrome, Jules. Like, you're doing great. Think of where you've come from.
It's so true. It's so true. I think it keeps us fresh. I think it's human. It keeps us striving. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if there's ever going to be a time in my career, in anyone's career, where imposter syndrome doesn't find its way in. Maybe it lessens, but I almost feel like it should almost always be there to keep you on your toes, to keep you learning, to keep you stretching. And I mean, I guess, as uncomfortable as it is at sometimes, I think it's fair to say maybe never want it to go away.
Absolutely.
It could be a little quieter. It could be a little quieter some days, but for the most part, I think keeping it there is something to embrace. And I hope that's not a hot take. I haven't, like I said, it could be controversial, but I see the benefits of it. So be curious to know others' thoughts on it. I know it's a topic we're always talking about. So what do you think? Do you think we answered and covered everything?
Yeah, I think so. Although I'd love to. So we've talked about advice that we would give to fellow women in the business place, but what's one piece of bad advice that you've heard in the past that you would not want to keep perpetuating?
I am so glad you asked this question because we had talked about, there's bad advice out there. And when I was researching for this podcast, I was trying to just take in, what the different perspectives are. And I came across a tip that I'll say flabbergasted, because the tip was, it said, don't take it personal. And I was like, interesting. I wonder what this means. Like, maybe this is about feedback, which there's a case to be made to not take feedback too personally. But the writer actually said, if you hear something condescending or humiliating, don't take it personally. Have a thick skin. And I was just like, this can't be. How do I rip this page out of the internet? Like, that's a terrible tip. So to that, I say, no, let's go back to that number one tip. Be yourself. If something is said that doesn't feel right, if something is said that made you uncomfortable or someone on your team uncomfortable or was just downright wrong, it needs to be addressed. Like, sure, there are things you cannot take personally, but when it comes down to if someone's humiliated or it's condescending, no, it needs to be called out. And there's a tactful, professional way to approach those situations. I really believe that.
Absolutely. And it goes back to truly every single tip goes against every single tip that we've given. Like, it's not advocating for yourself and speaking up in those moments. And that's what keeps perpetuating all of the different dynamics felt in the workplace between men and women.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because it also goes back to laughing at a joke you don't find funny, which that is like against my DNA and my core. And And we joked about this, like, I don't know, it's from the North. Maybe that's why I wasn't raised with that sweet Southern charm, but like, no, I can't laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and I'm not going to let someone say something inappropriate, like, and let it slide.
Absolutely. As you shouldn't.
Okay, question for you though. What do we do? We're in an agency world. We work with clients. Put you on the spot. But what do we do if that person's a client?
This is where it gets a little bit tricky. I mean, I always am a proponent of, if you feel like it could be bad in the moment, taking a breath to maybe formulate what you want to say, how you want to convey it, maybe speak with HR or a coworker that you really trust and feel like could give you great advice, or even just, speak. Sometimes I would be like, I might need to go to John and Josh about this, because if it's super bad, then we shouldn't be having that type of business, if somebody says something so horrible. But I think, there's a way to handle it, because it's obviously a different dynamic of that we're being paid to do certain things for the client. But yeah, I don't think we should let them get away with it, because it'll just keep happening in the world if nobody says anything.
Yeah, totally agree. I think we don't give people enough credit. You can give feedback, just like we said, just like give that feedback to that professional. And I'm sure that person can handle that. I have a lot of faith in people when it comes to feedback, that, it's a gift, and share that, and they'll take that with them, and we'll keep, working towards the goals we were working towards. It doesn't need to be this big, huge, scary thing. Let's just address it, move on. So, I totally agree. I definitely agree with that. I'm so glad we got to that, because I think that's so important. But this could be like a monthly series. I mean, women, that topic.
I know.
It's
so broad.
So broad. So broad.
You and I could probably talk about this for hours, but I do feel like we should probably start wrapping it up. But I would love to end on a positive note of thinking of some of the traits of this next generation that will help women advance more in the workplace. I think there's so many exciting things on the horizon for women. And I think the next generation obviously is going to be a big part of that. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Lindsay. I might add some.
I love that. Great closing thought. When I think of Gen Z that's coming up, I think of those first 2 points we talked about. I think they are really going to master being yourself at work and advocating for yourself. And I couldn't be more excited and more proud to see that infiltrating the workplace. What about you?
Absolutely. I feel like Gen Z seems to not really care about societal norms as much, which I think is amazing. And all of these societal norms are just things that have been so constructed and just, perpetuated through every generation. And I just see them, not afraid to speak out for, other people, for their opinions, and to try new ideas, to share new things. I just think it's very exciting to see all that's to come.
I love that. I love that so much. What an important point to add. What a great note to end on. I just want to thank all the women in my life and our lives that have shaped us, all the hard work they've put in to give us this great life. And I say we come back on this topic next year and see how we're feeling then. Just kind of compare notes from 2023 to 2024. What do you say?
Yes. And thank you, Rita and Marianne, for listening.
Oh, Rita, Marianne, we love you. All right. Okay. I'll talk to you later, Jules.
Bye.
Bye.